but the PTSA Council's goal of 40,000 pounds. This year, our schools and departments collected nearly 8,400 pounds of non-perishable food items, $11,700 for a combined total of 67,020 pounds when the cash is converted to pounds of food. For every dollar of donation, up to 5 pounds of food can be purchased by Veep. All the food and cash were donated to the Bloomington-based Volunteers Enlisted to Assist People, Veep for short, which serves low-income families and individuals in Bloomington, Edina, and Richfield. It is also my pleasure to present the We Believe Alliance World Record Trophy to Principal Ben Magras, representing Valley View Middle School, and Luetta Larson from Thermo King, Valley View's business partner, and Ann Mann, a teacher representing the schools. Valley View Middle School is the recipient of this year's trophy after students, staff, and employees of Thermo King collected 25,705 combined pounds of food and cash. Their efforts resulted in unseating Jefferson High School last year's recipient. Steve Hill's hiding back there. So Ben, congratulations.
Thank you. So we got you this year, Mr. Hill. Just a huge thank you to Thermo King, who we've reestablished our business partnership with this year. We had a business partnership a while back, and Luetta Larson came calling earlier this year, and I'm really thankful that we've reestablished our business partnership with you. And of course, we would not have won the trophy without Thermo King. So thank you very much, and I look forward to our continued business partnership in the future. It's also reignited students at our school. For quite a long time, our food drive was relatively dormant. And this opportunity to engage with Thermo King really ignited our students and our staff, and they all chipped in and did an excellent job. So kudos to my entire staff and our students at Valley View, and thank you again to Luetta Larson and Anna Mann for your work with our students as a teacher later. Thank you.
Get my props here, sorry. Okay, this year we are also recognizing 2 other schools with certificates of achievement. Boy, I can't speak tonight. Jefferson High School for collecting the highest total cash amount, which was $1,975, and Oak Grove Middle School for collecting 1,107 pounds of food, the highest total of pounds collected in the district. I'd like to welcome Oak Grove up here and Jefferson High School. Go for it.
Well, I want to thank Linda Batterson and everyone for their great efforts to organize this event. And this has been a great tradition at Oak Grove Middle School for our students to get involved in service learning. And when they get behind the food drive and other events like this, Pains for Patients, our students are just second to none. They really take a lot of passion and show a lot of school pride and service learning. And with me today, I have some students from our leadership group that really did a big piece of helping organize this event at our school to make it really student-driven and run here. And I want to introduce Maren Gustafson, Cameron Johnson, Hannah Bach, Hava Kivens, and Rachel Schauer. And Rachel's going to say a few words about our leadership group and what they did to help organize the event at our school.
Hi. We're from Young Women's Leadership, which is a group of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade girls who focus on different things throughout the school. We do fundraising throughout the year, and one of our fundraisers was a talent show for Veep. And so all of the money we raised, and we also raised food items as the ticket to get into the show for Veep. And so we took from our student put on talent show, we used all the money and food that we raised to go to Veep, so that was one of the main things. We also did other things throughout the school, but that's what brought in most of our money. So that was really great, and it's always a very fun activity to do for everybody, so we're glad to include everybody in that. So thank you.
And then I'll turn it over to Steve Hill just for a minute to come and say congratulations, or do you need a tissue?
What is my, like the second place loser? Is that, well, I invited all 1,700 of my students to come tonight, but they're all home studying right now because we've got finals coming up and important to study for those too, so they couldn't make it tonight. But I want to congratulate the other two schools and all of Bloomington that raises money here. And I think one thing that we are doing in this day and age that is much better than what most of us adults did is that concept of community service is really, really important. And when I look at how kids get to college, colleges look at grades, that's important, and AP test scores and ACT scores and all those kind of academic things. But community service, service learning is also a very important component. And the kids growing up today, and they've been this way for maybe 5 or 10 years, are so much better at service learning than what adults are sitting here in their room watching. And I'd like to congratulate that kids for understanding that importance of that service to the community. So thank you very much. And I think I was less than 2 minutes.
That's right. Good job.
Yeah.
Okay, and last but not least, I have to call up Pamela Page from Veep and have her say a couple words.
I'm just going to take a few minutes to tell you all what your efforts mean to Veep. And so I really want to thank the student leadership right here, and also thank the adult leadership at this school, as Veep really enjoys this relationship with the school district. And so really on behalf of the 7,000 individuals that we serve every single month that come through the food shelf, thank you for what you did. At this very day, we started putting together the items that we will be giving out when schools close and when the free and reduced lunch program is over. Veep is a place where students can come. And so your efforts make a difference in helping us be able to serve those folks. So I just want to say thank you. And also say that the part of service learning that the students get in participating, our hope is that they will continue to be good stewards, but also by bringing that can, that our students would know that Veep is a place where they can come if they need to, that it's a place where food is available to them and their family if it's something that they need. So thank you for participating, and thanks for our business partners as well.
Thank you. We appreciate receiving that report on how things went this year. And then a reminder as well, some of you know this, some it's new information, but you may be interested that the food drive results will be highlighted by Mayor Winstead at the City Council meeting coming up on Monday, June 3rd. That's next Monday at 7 p.m. And some of the same people who are here tonight will be attending to receive recognition from the city for their efforts. Next, we would like to recognize that the Bloomington School District has earned the Energy Star Leader Award from the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And we have at the microphone now Rod Zivkovich, Executive Director of Finance and Support Services, and Mike Berg, Director of Buildings and Grounds, to tell us more about this award.
Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, I'm honored to be here tonight to provide this Energy Star Leader Award to Bloomington Schools. I really want to thank Mike Berg, his central maintenance staff, and all the custodians at all the sites for all the work they do for us to be able to receive this award. But this award isn't only developed with the custodial staff. It's only successful if everybody within the district participates. So I want to thank everybody within the district of their involvement of making sure that they're maintaining and looking after the energy consumption within the district. The Environmental Protection Agency lists 200 Energy Star leaders, is comprised of a group of organizations nationwide to improve the efficiency across their buildings. The Energy Star program focuses on energy efficiency through ongoing performance measurements and whole building improvements. To be eligible for recognition, an organization is required to track and submit energy performance data by building and by fuel source. Energy Star leaders must meet one of two requirements. First, a 10% improvement on energy performance across an entire building, or two, known as a top performer, requires an organizational building to perform in the top 25% of the buildings nationwide. Bloomington Public Schools has been named to be a top performer. The list of Energy Star includes school districts, nationwide retailers, commercial real estate companies, healthcare systems, supermarkets, and hotels that have achieved energy efficiency improvements across more than 11,400 buildings combined. I want to thank everyone again within the district and Mike Berg and his staff for all that they've done and all the support that the school board has given us for energy efficiency. Turn it over to Mike to say a couple words.
Just want to thank everybody for all their help and their vision. We started this about 10, 11 years ago, and we've come a long way. And like Rod says, it's great. It's a full district commitment. It's not just my department, it's the staff and everything. So thank you very much.
And thank you to Mr. Zivkovich and Mr. Berg for making that report to us. We appreciate you moving forward in the area of energy savings and updating our facilities accordingly. Now is the time for anyone to address the school board on an issue that's not on the agenda. Would anyone like to come forward to speak to the school board at this time? Then if not, we're prepared to move on to Part A agenda. Is there a motion to accept Part A?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded for Part A agenda. These are items that don't normally require further discussion or separate motions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. And we'll move then to our Part B agenda. We have two items on the Part B agenda. Item number one, Mr. Tim Anderson is going to present to us social studies curriculum information, grades 6 through 12. We heard curriculum information for our elementary schools and passed on it at our last meeting 3 weeks ago, and we're now prepared to learn more, and Tim will introduce other people at the table who are involved in the process.
Chair,
Yes, Director Hibbs, please.
resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 adopts the social studies curriculum for grades 6 through 12 effective with the 2013-14 school year.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We have a motion in front of us. Please give us some background information.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, guests. It's my pleasure this evening to present to you and be a part of the team that led the secondary social studies curriculum review process. As the chair indicated, you'll recall that a few weeks ago we were here as part of the successful elementary adoption of the new state standards and the prioritization in Bloomington. This is a continuation, extension of that revision at the secondary level. So by way of beginning an introduction, I want to thank our steering team members. You can see that list of individuals projected. This is a group of folks who represent our 5 secondary sites, student services, academic services, and the community members. In particular, I want to thank Dan Anderson, formerly social studies teacher at Olson, who serves as a district mentor, who's here tonight to articulate some of the finer points of our revision. Thanks to Dan. I also want to thank Heidi Simons, social studies department chair at Jefferson, who is here also tonight to further articulate some of the finer points of this revision. I also want to particularly thank Jean Andriotti, who's not here this evening, a community member who represents and did represent on this revision the District Curriculum Advisory Committee as mandated by state statute. And finally, last but not least, I want to recognize and thank Sean Foley, Curriculum Coordinator, who represents academic services on this revision. Sean is finishing his 4th year as a curriculum coordinator and has made the determined decision to return to teach math at Jefferson next year. Sean's known and has a reputation in our district as one of our finest math teachers, and he brought his exemplary effectiveness to serve at the district level. For that, I'm particularly and profoundly thankful. While we're sad to see him go, we know that the students and family and staff at Jefferson benefit greatly from his leadership at the site level. So thanks to Sean for his service. As you'll recall, many of you know that we have a 7-year curriculum cycle in Bloomington, and for 3 of those 7 years, we have active processes in place for a particular discipline. In this case, social studies, you'll see year 1, 2, and 3 outlined on your screen. In our first year of work, we outlined and investigated evidence-based practice and did a program evaluation of our current social studies program. In the second year, we did curriculum development, standards prioritization, and focused on material selection. And moving into year 3, we'll implement the findings, the prioritized standards, and the new instructional materials, along with doing assessment writing. And so this revision is coming to the conclusion of year 2, and we have prepared for year 3. Of course, professional development has been embedded in the process and is ongoing. We've had professional development already this spring. There are plans for that over the summer and into next school year. So for some of the specifics about this revision, I'll invite Sean to articulate some about the new state standards you heard about a few weeks ago. As the key facilitator of this process, I'll turn it over to Sean Foley.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks to the board for having us here today to talk about the social studies standards. In the Bloomington curriculum process, most of our work revolves around standards, and in a core area like social studies, most of our work revolves around state standards. And so we try to line up our curriculum cycle so it matches up with the states, and in social studies we succeeded pretty well with that. The state just came out with new standards that were sort of officially adopted recently, but we've had a draft from the state that we've been able to work with throughout our process. And I'm going to talk a little bit about a couple of the major shifts at the state level, and then Heidi and Dan will talk about how those shifts are playing out in Bloomington. One of the major structural shifts from the state legislature is that we are now given grade-specific benchmarks in grades K through 8. Previous to this, they were grade banded, and so, for example, in middle school, grades 6 through 8, we had all those standards, and the local districts could decide how and where to teach them. It's now specific by grade level, so the state says in 6th grade, these are the standards, in 7th grade, these are the standards, and so on. There are a couple sort of content-specific things that the state also introduced in all disciplines. They're looking at exploring more fully the contributions of Minnesota's American Indian tribes, so that's obviously particularly relevant in social studies. And then they also added additional standards or benchmarks around financial literacy, personal finance, and geographic information systems. A couple other structural shifts. If you review the standards documents that I believe you had in your board packets, you may find this hard to believe, but one of the goals of the state was to provide us with fewer standards and benchmarks overall. They say that they did that. There are still quite a few in there. They also adopted what's called an anchor standard approach, and they have this similar approach in language arts. And basically what that means is the standards carry throughout the grade levels. And so if you really look at the standards closely, you can see some of those same anchor standards in 3rd grade, and then again in 5th grade, and then again in 8th grade and 10th grade, and so on. And then they're sort of developed more specifically in the benchmarks to be appropriate for that particular grade level. Another shift at the K-8 level, as they went to more specific benchmarks for particular grades, is that they're looking at all 4 social studies disciplines and having them better integrated at each of those grade levels. So K-8, as Dan will talk about in just a minute, it's interdisciplinary approach, and so there's a number of different areas to social studies content, and we're seeing all of them in our K-8 classes. And so Heidi and Dan will talk a little bit now about how those shifts at the state level are playing out in our Bloomington curriculum adoption.
So I'll take the first point here. Grade 6 is now doing Minnesota history instead of ancient civilizations. So that was kind of one of the major changes in this state rewrite, that we're moving Minnesota history to 6th grade. So.
And then I'll take the second point. More geography is coming into 9th grade. 9th grade has also been changed from just civics, which it has been in the past, to now social studies 9, which will incorporate civics, geography, and economics as well. So that is something new for us in 9th grade.
Also new are specifically embedded literacy standards. We've prioritized some of these as being important for social studies, so they're going to be part of the regular curriculum. Not it's not going to be piecemeal. It's going to be specific things. So that's some of the work that we'll do with the literacy leaders. Already has begun, but we're going to do some more professional development with them next year and then ongoing. So.
And then the second to the last point, it talks about the increased visibility, which Sean already mentioned as well, about the inclusion of American Indian standards. That's happening in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 11th. And the 6th grade has already had some professional development with Heidi Hecker, and then the 7th and 11th grade teachers were brought together as well for some professional development already this spring. And then once we start working and implementing the standards in the fall, our plan is to continue where we feel like we need additional support to continue working with Heidi as well. And then the last thing that is up there as well is talking about personal finance, which Sean mentioned as well, and that will be in the 12th grade economics courses.
So this slide is kind of a map of those standards, and if we were to start with, say, 4th grade here, kind of their main one of the 4 in 4th grade is geography, but they'll also get citizenship and government, they'll get some economics, they'll also get some history. Then if you look to 5, 6, and 7, all 3 of those, their main concentration on history. As we already mentioned, history for 6th grade is going to be Minnesota, and then 7th grade U.S. History, which they've been doing for the last cycle as well. And then 8th grade is going to focus most of their attention on geography. Again, that's been the trend already. So, but I guess they kind of want to point out that all 4 of those disciplines are going to be part of each of those grades. So.
And then at the high school, I already mentioned in 9th grade, we'll have Social Studies 9, which will incorporate civics, government standards, economics, and geography. And then in 10th grade, there will be world history. And then in 11th, U.S. history. And in 12th grade, there will be economics and U.S. government as well. And then there are also, those are the main courses, and then we'll also have the AP offerings as well.
Thank you. As I talked about earlier, in Bloomington, our curriculum process revolves around standards, and one of the main things we do is prioritize the standards. And as you look at the standards in your board packet, you can see that we prioritize them to be essential, important, or enhancing. And this is what we've been working on really over the past year, and we've gotten feedback from a variety of sources. And one of the things that the teams have focused on was really making sure we selected a more manageable number of standards as essential and important, so that the things that we deem to be the most important, we can really make sure that we're doing well. And just a little further description of the categories. Essential standards are the ones that really rise to the top, and they have endurance, leverage, and they really prepare students for their ongoing education in social studies. And as Tim referenced in the overview of the curriculum cycle earlier, the sort of last piece of our formal curriculum cycle for social studies will be next year when we're implementing the new standards. And then we'll also be working with those new essential standards, and teams of teachers will be writing common district assessments tied to those essential standards that will be delivered across all the appropriate classes at all the buildings in Bloomington. This year, one change at the essential standard level is that the state adopted many skill-based standards, and the steering committee really liked those and really thought that they fit the bill of those points that I just referenced in terms of having leverage and endurance. And so as you review the documents, you'll see that in most cases the essential standards are what we would consider to be skill-based. There's an example from high school history up on the screen where you evaluate alternative interpretations of historical events and use historical evidence to support or refute those interpretations. It's not tied to specific historical content, but it's something that teachers would be addressing throughout the course with a variety of content that is mentioned in the important standards. And the important standards are also vital. They're maybe not quite to the level of essential, but everybody is teaching and assessing those. We don't have a formal process for writing common district assessments for important standards like we do for essential standards, but through informal processes, we still often end up with common assessments tied to many of those important ones. And then the final category is enhancing. These are the ones that the Bloomington educators determined to not be essential to the course, and we basically don't spend as much time on those as we do with essential and important standards. The final piece of the puzzle is instructional materials. The curriculum in Bloomington is really the standards, which for our core classes we get from the state, but we need instructional materials to address those standards, and so that's what we have been working on recently, and we've been making selections, and as several people have alluded to, we have a variety of professional development plan related to those new materials and the online resources that accompany many of those resources from the publishers. I think that's all we have for you in terms of a formal presentation, but we're ready to take any questions or comments that people may have.
Yes, Director Hibbs.
Well, I appreciate all of you hanging in there with us to this late hour. My question goes to the fact that you're at this step in developing, revising the curriculum. And I'm wondering, with respect to this proposed one-to-one computing initiative that is moving forward, have your discussions included how you're going to make that transition? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, throughout the whole revision, it's been a consideration. We began the revision process with that in mind and had many discussions related to that. And because of the unknown nature of how fast we'd be able to do that conversion, we've had to proceed with kind of straddling that line of we want to be ready for digital conversion to the best of our ability, but we also want to make sure that students and teachers have the resources they need. For example, at the high school level, under Next Technologies for Learning, high school teachers and students might not have access to one-to-one devices for 3 years. And so we had to make plans and provisions based on that fact. So we're working with publishers on to what degree we can have access in an online format, to what degree PDFs are available, and also making sure that at a minimum we have class sets of materials that fit with what we need as that conversion occurs. But I'd ask the teachers on the committee to kind of maybe articulate a little bit about how we've thought about that and how we've prepared and how we plan to prepare with our professional development plans related to that question.
I can take a little bit of that. We have been, as we've looked at materials, looking at a variety of different ways that, like Tim mentioned, if there would be an application, not knowing for a while when we were having to start to make decisions what direction the one-to-one would actually look like in Bloomington, that made it a little bit difficult to figure out what direction to go. Publishers have different access to those things. But we tried to find resources that, like Tim mentioned as well, where you could have a classroom set, and as one-to-one gets, into the high schools, that there could be that transition so students do have access in front of them. A lot of us have already been transforming things over where we operate off of Google Sites on a daily basis already. So, seeing the one-to-one device being a part of our classroom on a regular basis, I know in my U.S. history class and my civics class, that'd be very helpful. Right now, I kind of operate it and the kids can access it later, but that would be then right in their own hands. So I think it's not just the resources there, but the other tools that we have in the classroom of how that could support it.
And does it seem like when it comes time to make those transitions that we'll sort of have the human bandwidth to get that done along with all the other things that you're doing in terms of implementing the curriculum and so forth?
I think that most people are, the little bits and pieces, even if you think about where we've gone with Google in the last couple of years, everybody is kind of in a different spot, and being a member on our staff development team at Jefferson as well, that's one of the things we're always looking at. Where are people at, and how can we differentiate our practice even for our teachers and where they're at with that comfort level. And I can tell you just from Jefferson's staff development or professional development planning, that's one of the things we're looking at. Knowing that one-to-one is coming, how can we start to support our staff already so they're ready for it? So it's not all of a sudden our students show up with it, nor we're wondering. So, at least from my perspective at Jefferson, we're kind of thinking about that because we know what the reality is coming down the road. And people are really excited about it, and I think the kids will be too.
I would just mention that some of this in the middle school has been ongoing, sort of, for several years. There have been a high number of laptops. I don't think we can go say one-to-one, but we've been using technology integrated with our curriculum for several years at an almost one-to-one level. So at least there's some experience. They're coming to this new situation with some ideas, some experiences, and some things that have already been in place. So I think the learning curve will be not terrible. I'm not sure how to say that exactly, but I think people will come with some experience, and the transition into full digital will be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Director Bergstrom.
Yes, thank you, first of all, for coming. Dan, Heidi, Sean, and of course, Tim. Just a quick question. I know that sometimes people can be resistant to change. I know I'm still learning how to use my new electric toothbrush. I'm wondering, how do the teachers feel about the newer standards, what the state is telling us we have to do? Are the teachers ready to rock and roll, and they're going to hit the ground running when you come back in the fall, or what's the feeling that you're getting from the teachers?
I would say this, sorry, Dan, if I keep jumping in. This is my 17th year in Bloomington, and going from all of these different curriculum revisions, I think this is now my 4th one almost. Every time the team of people that are together, it seems to be that we are better at what we do, and figuring that out. And I really think where the placement of the standards have gone this year with the teams of teachers who have come together to prioritize, where in the past, sometimes it's been harder to do some of that, it really made sense to us, and a lot of us really appreciated the skills base coming back in. In the past, sometimes, if some of you remember, not that the content still isn't a part of it, or specific things for us to think about within each discipline, but sometimes it's been so content focused that you've lost sight of the skill. And so I think that's been kind of a refreshing thing, and actually made it a little bit easier for us on the process, at least from the high school perspective. And I've been involved with, the big part of it with the steering committee, but also then working on smaller teams of teachers with civics, or I should say Social Studies 9, sorry. I only made one mistake tonight with that. Social Studies 9, and then also US History as well. And looking at those, it's been really positive for us. And I think also Sean alluded to the kind of bringing down the number of standards that we put as essential and important. I think sometimes we've tried to put too many in there in the past, and then you don't feel that maybe you're doing things as great as you could be in the classroom. So I think all of us with our years of experience, this process, at least for me, probably was one of the most smooth ones. And also looking at other teachers that I work with at Jefferson, there really wasn't anything that was a roadblock to people putting those things into courses. Social Studies 9 was probably the one that had the biggest challenge to kind of figure out, where does geography work? And meeting for a half day, wasn't it just a few weeks ago, with teams of teachers from Jefferson and Kennedy, it was actually pretty amazing what we were able to kind of work through, and pulling together the geography, the economics, and the government standards, and seeing how many things actually interrelate to one another. And I think that's going to make it much more positive for the students, so it doesn't seem like, well, here's geography, here's government, but how is all that interrelated? So overall, I would say from the high school perspective, people have been very happy with it.
I would just add that I think Sean did a masterful job of bringing people in to be able to give their feedback or voice their concerns or say what they felt like they needed to say about the standards, and feel like their voice was heard. Now, that doesn't mean we can change what the state tells us we have to do. There was none of that, but I do feel like Sean was, with his organizational skills and even his technical skills, he got a lot of people into the conversation, and I think that's helped people to feel like their voice has been heard, and we're going to be able to move forward with more vigor, maybe, because of that. So change is hard, no doubt about it, but I think a lot of people have been are now ready to go. So
thanks for the kind words, Dan. I would echo all those sentiments. I think change is hard sometimes. And I can remember a few meetings vaguely from last school year where, you know, there was some anxiety around some of the changes, but I think we were able to see them coming far enough in advance that I think I can safely say people feel pretty good about things now and where they're at, ready for the implementation next year.
Thank you.
Other questions or other response from the board? In that case, you have a resolution before you for approval of this curriculum guide for grades 6 through 12. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Many thanks.
Next is a resolution relating to approving the revocation of existing capital projects levy authorization of the school district, approving a new authorization, and calling for a special election thereon. I would like to make the resolution. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 271 adopts the attached resolution relating to approving the revocation of the existing capital projects levy authorization of the school district, approving a new authorization, and calling for a special election on the general election date of November 5, 2013. This capital projects levy is to provide funding for the safety and security plan and technology plan starting in fiscal years 2014 through 2015. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Bergstrom. Is it a legal requirement that we read all of the terminology, Lawyer Holman?
Nope.
It is not. But in that, as I might provide some brief background, is we are revoking an existing capital levy authorization of 2.625 times the net tax capacity in the school district, replacing it one of 5.858% times the net tax capacity. And as the resolution specifies, this would take place at the election scheduled for November 5th, which will also be the date of election for city and school board positions. And at the table now is our Executive Director of Finance, Rod Zivkovich, prepared to answer questions and provide some further information. Rod.
Director Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, I'm here tonight as part of the resolution, the last part of our discussion that we've had regarding having provided you two plans, one for technology, one for security and safety, and providing you a financial plan which included a referendum this coming fall. So I guess I'm here for any questions regarding that.
The board has had opportunities to communicate personally and in writing, by email, since the original topic was broached a number of months ago, and most recently we were discussing it even at our last board meeting a week ago. Director Hibbs, you have some further questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I've had some people ask me, they've been observing our deliberations, and the question that came up was, you know, the financing of this sounds almost too good to be true in that it isn't going to increase anybody's property taxes. And so the question is, what's the worst thing that could happen with the financing?
The overall financing, it's a two-portion financing. One is the refinancing of current debt, which the board approved at the last board meeting. There was one refunding that was done there. There's two additional refundings that are going to be taken the year from this fall and then 2 years from that point in time. The second part of the financing plan is debt management, of making sure that how we allocate our debt for our out facility projects going forward. So it's spreading them out over a certain period of time. What Ellers has done for us in our projections, we can make sure that there is no tax impact over the next 10 years for the overall impact of this resolution.
Okay, but the question is, what could go wrong?
I guess the point of what could go wrong would be that market values could go down.
Okay. And so that would result in less revenue coming in on the basis of that levy.
Correct, similar to what we ran into the problem with the current levy that's out there right now.
Okay. So no possible adverse outcome for the taxpayer, only adverse outcome for the school district, in that we might not have as much revenue as we anticipated and we'd have to adjust our plans accordingly. Is that a true statement?
Yes, and also there is, when we look forward, depending on the TIF that comes up with Mall of America, we have not accounted for that in our plan. That could be a benefit for both taxpayers and the district at that point in time.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Are there some further questions of Mr. Zivkovich? Then without further questions, is there board discussion at this time? Yes, Director Abelin.
Thank you. I just have a question about formality and so forth. What we see in front of us, this sample ballot, this entire 3-paragraph statement, along with the question, along with that last in bold black, by voting yes on this ballot question, you are voting for a property tax increase. That whole page, that whole statement is on the ballot?
Correct.
So how are you going to answer that last statement? By voting yes on this ballot, you are voting for a property tax increase, basically doubling it.
I'll let Rick probably better answer that question than I can.
A very informed communication effort to let parents and community residents that are of voting age to clearly outline the referendum and the funding package. That is a legal requirement on the ballot, so it's pointing it out. That would be our response.
I agree with that. A good promo would help here, but when I see my tax statement now, I see some amount that is generated by 2.625%. Come 2 years from now, I'm going to see that same tax statement that's going to have 5.858%. That's obviously double. What I, as a taxpayer, am going to see that double amount on my tax statement, are I not?
On your tax statement, there are 2 line items. There are voter approved
Right.
and non-voter approved. The levies that the board has approval to be able to put in place with the levy process. What we're saying is that the tax impact, the overall tax impact that a taxpayer has will not change from what it is currently at. So there might be some shifting between the 2, but overall, there won't be a overall tax increase.
So, okay, I can buy that. Okay, that's a good explanation. The authorized levy will go up, but the other one will go down, supposedly, because of all of the bonding things and so forth.
Correct.
Okay.
Are there other questions or discussion? I'm looking to move to a vote here eventually, so what you need to have members of the board here or the public here, now is your opportunity. Director Hibbs.
Well, I wanted to mention a couple things. I think what this illustrates, this discussion we're having, is that, the biggest challenge here in this referendum will be communicating it effectively to the voters. And I think there's a lot of things that we have to effectively communicate. And I think there's lots of kind of unanswered questions that people are going to have. Not to belabor the point, but I've mentioned before that I think the mental health issues are equally an important side of the safety and security issue. I know there's a task force that will be convened in the fall. I think the board has to recognize that it's our responsibility, that there's follow-through on that, and that whatever the recommendations come back to us as, we need to you know, sort of have the courage to fund that in whatever way that we can. I guess I'm also somewhat concerned that, you know, I've been looking for all the research I can find on one-to-one computing initiatives, and one of the things that comes through in the things that I've read is that when you're trying to implement something like this, it really needs to be a multidisciplinary effort. It needs to involve, you know, the technology experts like Mr. Weiser. It needs to involve the teaching staff and the paras. You know, it needs to involve a lot of people. Now, that may be happening behind the scenes, but I guess from my standpoint, I haven't seen that. So I'm wondering about that. And I think it's really important. The teachers are the most important part of the success of this initiative. If they're not being brought along for the ride here, I think we're going to be in trouble. So I'd like some assurances at some point that that's happening, and I think the community will as well. I've talked before about the fact that I'd feel much more comfortable if there were some metrics around, you know, what are we trying to accomplish through this? We've got some metrics around providing access to tools and about, you know, implementation of flipped and hybrid classes, but for the school board, it's all about academic achievement. So I think the community's going to wonder, you know, what's our return on investment going to look like? How are we going to know we're getting what we need to be getting? How do we know that we should continue to invest this money? Likewise, I think, as I said, that, you know, the teacher's ability to implement this technology and take advantage of it in their teaching, we need metrics around that as well. And again, that all speaks to what's the professional development look like? What are the training plans? That's all going to cost money. That's all going to take time. At some point, people need to see that level of detail to understand that, you know, we've got a robust plan. You know, I asked where do the bargaining units stand on these, and I think the response really has been no response. I'm a little puzzled by that. I hope that, you know, before we go to a vote in November that, you know, we've got everybody behind us, because that would be troubling if we didn't. You know, likewise, deploying this is going to take a lot of training and development, and I just, you know, wonder if we've got the human bandwidth to do that. It seems to me there may be the need for a lot of other positions to make this happen the way it should happen. I've seen some research that suggests that, you know, not only your kind of traditional curriculum specialists, but you sort of need people who are digital curriculum specialists who really know how to take advantage of that technology. I guess the thing that kind of bothers me is that I looked for research on student achievement, and I would say at best it's inconclusive. You can find some research out there that says that one-to-one computing is great for student achievement, but if you look at who actually did that research, it tends to be funded by technology companies. A lot of the research that I found that was maybe done by schools of education, their findings tended to suggest there was some evidence that writing achievement, which kind of surprised me, but that writing achievement was improved as a result of one-to-one technology initiatives. You know, clearly there's some benefit in terms of what we talk about in terms of 21st century skills and just this notion of students being engaged in school. But again, I'd feel a lot better if we kind of knew what target we were shooting for and had a way of measuring our success. You know, anything you do like this has opportunity costs associated with it. So I think we, as a board, need to be very confident that whatever might come along later you know, this is the best use of resources. This is the best use of our political capital, because we're probably not going to be in a position to, you know, ask the voters for more money for something else in the near future. And then the last and probably most important point is that anytime the school district makes a paradigm shift like this, there are opportunity costs for students. I remember going to graduation a couple of years ago, and one of the students that was giving a graduation speech talked about how his particular class had been sort of victim of all these changes that the district had made. So they went through the different grade level configurations, and they went through different class schedules and so forth. And, you know, our students are resilient, and by and large, most of them, you know, find their way through that. But what I'm concerned about is, you know, who might pay the price by making this paradigm shift. And my fear is it's the students who can least afford to pay a price. So that's what I'm worried about, and I would hope that our voters are worried about it, and I hope you're all worried about it. And I hope that we have some better assurances by November that, you know, we're prepared to take everybody with us and help everybody be successful. I think, you know, responsibility for answering a lot of these questions and concerns lies with the superintendent and the administration. I trust that, you know, you'll be responsive, and I think you understand that in order to be successful in a referendum campaign, we have to answer these questions to the satisfaction of the majority of the voters. With that understanding, you know, I'm willing to bet on the collective wisdom of the masses whether these initiatives are right for the Bloomington schools, because, you know, I heard what we heard from Decision Resources about unanimity in moving forward with these initiatives, but I did want everyone to be clear on the concerns that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other board reactions, comments, questions at this time?
Yeah, just
Yes,
one,
Director Corman.
One quick comment on safety and security, and again, going back to mental health, and the importance of the teachers' involvement, and not only in the technology plan, but also in a safety and security plan, but just because teachers and students are the ones who are in the classroom and potentially most at risk, I would say. You know, when it comes to mental health, and we're going to be talking about it and taking a look at all of those issues related to this, I like to ask that we not only consider students, but also teachers. In terms of the mental health of the students is very important, but it's also important to make sure that we are taking care of our teachers.
Would you like a response? As you know, the recommendations are for the task force to do its work, to look at staffing, identification, intervention, based on our current practices, current work, and how that meets or does not meet what is expected. As we've learned over the past several months since December, and the mental health issue has certainly rose to prominence of discussion both on local, state, and national levels, that we see a growing request for not only the state, but also nationally, to weigh in on policy initiatives or directives for school districts. Because once again, school districts are being asked to do, in many respects, what we expect our Creator to do. We can only provide so much. The safety and security provisions that are part of the technology, are part of the capital projects levy proposal, does not fund staffing in mental health. It only funds those pieces that capital projects levy can, which are physical pieces. So it's been very important for us to make the distinction, not only with our staff, but our community, how those funds are, can be spent. And it sort of goes to Mr. Director Hibbs's comments and questions, which were both very good and challenging. In the with respect to the need for the school district to do a very informative campaign, but that's all the school district can do, is provide information. We cannot advocate for this, for or against it. And so it's incumbent upon us and every one of you sitting around this table to enlist the support of friends, neighbors, relatives, and staff to get involved in the campaign. Referendums are extremely challenging because it takes a tremendous amount of effort to communicate clearly with the expectations and the requests and how the funding is going to be used and the impact on taxpayers. And when we get tired of saying it, it's about the first time our residents are hearing it. And so it's a concerted effort that begins after the vote is taken, if it's an affirmative, from now until November 5th. And so I would call upon school board members, all of our staff, the leadership, to, if this is the board's direction, which is the administration's recommendation, that we come together as an organization and truly work towards the passage of this. A neutral is a no vote. Our community deserves nothing less than a formative, very clear, and as Mr. Hibbs said, very succinct responses to tough questions. And with that, Mr. Hibbs, your questions and Mr. Ablin's questions and Director Corman's questions are very good in the fact that we've started an FAQ already on a special website that, depending on the outcome of the board's vote, will go live very shortly. So I thank you.
Director Corman, any follow-up? Other board member comments? All right, are you prepared to move to a vote on this? I will call for a vote. The resolution is the capital projects levy, providing funding for safety and security plan and technology plan, and the revocation of our current bonding authority so that we can replace it with one that gives us greater authorization. Not part of the resolution, but the understanding of how it will be implemented is that we're looking for this to have no net impact on property taxes that are paid in Bloomington. By the way, that we will use bonding authority that we currently have and this bonding authority that we are asking for. Did I state that correctly?
Yes.
All right, is the board prepared to vote? This requires a recorded vote. And so I will begin, rather than with Director Bergstrom, we'll start at the other direction and move around from my left-hand side around the table, starting with Director Corman. You may vote.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
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 We have 7 recorded yes votes. The resolution passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me add that the conversation will continue. The board has raised some very sincere and legitimate questions about implementation, not only of the use of those things which would be acquired through our capital bonding, but also regards to the people who will be working with not only the equipment, but with our school safety and with other elements of sensitivity to student and educational needs. And that will be the role of the board moving forward, not only till the election, but following the election, because the date for implementation of the purchase and application of the more recent computer equipment, that is the Chromebooks, if that's what we will use as a computing device, will begin in the 2014-2015 year. So we have a planning year in effect, and a year to get some of the details taken care of, even in terms of the access questions, which we've asked about as a board quite a bit to ensure that we are not leaving anybody behind. Would anyone else care to comment now it's been passed? Any other observations? Otherwise, we will look to move to the final business of the day, which is our board member reports, followed by the superintendent's report. Are there any board members who wish to make formal reports? Director Bergstrom.
Thank you. You have to bear with me. I left my glasses in the other car. Just 3 things this particular time. I had the distinct pleasure of volunteering at the Normandale Hills Elementary Carnival I ran the ring toss. Fabulous carnival. Love to do that kind of stuff. Also was at Westwood School of Excellence Award ceremony. That was last week. It was raining outside, but it was warm and sunny inside. Also tonight, just before this meeting, we had the Celebration of Service Awards. Really nice to see. There's some people that were with the district for 40 years, 29 years, 15 years. The list goes on and on. So that was an interesting evening.
Other board members wish to make reports at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Fujitaki.
All right. The last day for our kindergartners through juniors is June the 6th. Our high school graduations will be held at the Minneapolis Convention Center, same as last year. Kennedy will be held on June 5th. That's a Wednesday. And Jefferson will be held on June 6th, a Thursday. Both programs will start at 7 p.m. I'd like to give an update, share an update with the public about the legislature and the outcome of that. At the start of the session, the school board identified 4 priorities, which we communicated to our legislative delegation. And I'm happy to report that the K-12 bill that was recently enacted into law positively addressed all 4 priorities. It didn't address totally everything we wanted, but it positively addressed everything that we had. So I'd like to recognize our legislative delegation, especially Representative Ann Chesky. Their knowledge and their decisions and their responsiveness was very helpful to our district and school districts throughout the state. And especially their attention to our early learners. So just sending our appreciation to their representation of our school community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other business? Well, then, with a reminder that we are going to follow this meeting with an informational program regarding upcoming budget decisions. This meeting is adjourned. Call a meeting of the study session of the Bloomington School Board to order at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, May 28th. We have a proposed agenda with one item on it, preliminary budget 2013-2014. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So move. Second.
Moved and second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll move forward then with, again, Rod Zivkovich at the microphone, leading a team here to address preliminary budget. And I caught you in a meeting a little bit earlier this afternoon in the superintendent's office, so they were having a conversation to prep for the meeting tonight, perhaps, but we have some coordination of information as we're moving into the budgeting process for next year. So, Rod, take it away.
Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, I have here tonight John Swinell, the Director of Food Service, Tom Astrak, the Director of Transportation, Tom Holton, the Executive Director of Community Services, and John Weiser, Executive Director of Technology. We're here tonight to present the non-general fund budgets for the 13-14 year. We're here to provide information in preparation of school board taking action on the proposed 13-14 budget. Note, there's no action needed at the board tonight. This is information only presentation with the opportunity for questions and comments. If you look at our overall strategic plan, we've talked many times about having our three different program areas: student services, academic services, and community services. We have resource plans that support those, and part of the resource plan that we're talking about tonight is our annual budget, which is part of the financial plan. The timeline is tonight. We'll be bringing you the group of non-general fund budgets. As mentioned earlier, no board action is needed. On June 17th, we'll bring the general fund, which will not be looking for any action that night. And on the 24th, we'll be bringing a resolution for the board to adopt the proposed budgets. If you look at, we have 4 budget areas. We have our capital and deferred maintenance areas. We have our debt service, which is our principal and interest on our debt. We have insurance and internal services, which is our dental and medical, our other post-employment benefits, and then our vacation and severance payments. And then we have our 4 operating funds of food service, transportation, community service, and general fund. At this point, I'll turn it over to John Swinell to talk you through both the operating capital and health and safety funds.
Thanks, Mark. 13-14 budget for our operating capital and health and safety funds. The operating capital fund comprises 2 primary programs. The first program within that fund is the operating capital program. This shows some of the items that this fund's dollars can be spent on. These are per the state statute. Just a few other items that we use this fund for are our tithes, fees, and our lease levy expenses. So we show our 12-13 revised budget, ending with a almost $5.2 million fund balance. Our 13-14 proposed budget, starting with that beginning fund balance of 5.2 almost, and then showing our revenues, anticipated revenues, our anticipated expenses, including our multi-year replacement plans, our lease levies, and so forth, ending with a $4.5 million fund balance. And primarily our increase in expenses from 12-13 to 13-14 was an increase in our textbook cost. The second major program of our operating capital fund is our health and safety fund. Again, per state statute, these are the type of items that this fund can be used for. This is an annual plan approved by the board and submitted to the state, and it's really a flow-through fund. Our levy complements the plan. So we start with our 12-13 revised budget, showing expenses over revenues for that year, ending with a minus $50,000 fund balance. For 13-14, we're showing revenues over expenditures, by $21,000, ending with a minus $32,000 fund balance. And again, this is a flow-through program. The revenues and expenses are fairly stable, and the reconciliation of this fund is done 2 years after the audit year.
The next fund is our alternate facility fund. Again, the alternate facility fund is for replacement of existing type projects. You can see some of the projects that are up there. This is the fund that the board recently approved a long-term plan of $15 million per year. If we look at the financials for this area, we began the year at $790,000. We planned on spending down the extra fund balance at that point in time to end the year at $90,000. Here is the additional dollars for this next year of the 15 million. Revenue and expenditures, it's similar to your health and safety being a flow-through. So it's showing that our increase within this is due to the $15 million approval by the board, which is a combination of both pay-as-you-go levy and bond sales that the board just approved last week. Our construction fund, this was dollars that we have set aside over time. You look at here, we had a beginning balance of $796,000. We received early education childhood construction grant of $700,000. We built the 2 classrooms at Valley View Elementary, which has pretty much spent the rest of the expenditures within this budget. I'll turn it over to John for the capital projects levy.
Thank you, Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members. This is a brief overview of the Capital Projects Fund. It's the tech levy. Here shows at least the last 5 years of revenue. The year that's not included here, the 2008-2009 year, was at $3 million of revenue. It rose in 9-10 and then went down as property values went down. We're expecting in the 13-14 school year the budget to be around $2.7 million. When you look at that $2.7 million, the intended spending for the 13-14 school year, $1.7 million about of that money is slated for replacement, technology replacement plan that includes all the computers, peripherals, projection units that we use throughout the district. We try to maintain a 2/3, 1/3 balance in this with these funds, so that the $1 million that's remaining goes as close as we can get it into classrooms. The group that controls that spending, prioritizes that spending, is GATE, the group for the advancement of innovative technology, co-chaired by Tim Anderson in academic services and myself. The 3 areas that we prioritize funding of that $1 million is in the curriculum instruction and assessment category. Items that you've seen before around literacy, around open source textbooks, those kind of initiatives. Second category is around future of online learning, trying to grow online learning options for students. That's where all the flipped instruction, professional development, and funding goes, as well as continuing to grow hybrid learning in the district. And the third area of spending is innovative classroom technology. So these are the teaching tools that go right into classrooms, like smart boards, Chromebooks, document cameras, and so on. So if you look at the overview of this budget, the high-level overview of this budget, you can see in the 12-13, this current school year, we had about $2.7 million of revenue. We spent about $3.4 million, which was over by about $700,000. That was an intentional overspend. It was money that had been saved to do an infrastructure replacement of our telephone system, you'll recall, during this last fall. There you see the 13-14 proposed budget, again, around $2.7 million of revenue. about $2.7 million of expenditures, bringing us in even, and there's the differences from 12-13 to 13-14.
Yes, at this point in time, we'll kind of stop with this first group area, ask if there's any questions on the capital and deferred maintenance items in the budget.
Yes.
I
Go ahead,
have a question concerning your capital. Knowing full well that we now have free full day kindergarten, I'm assuming we have classroom prep type things to get ready for that. Is that in this budget? I'm looking at slide number 7, I guess. Is that where I find,
Yes.
realizing that it doesn't go into effect until 14, but we have to get ready for it. So is that in this budget?
It would be in the operating capital budget, so it'd be the first budget that was shown, where we had a fund balance of a little over $5 million.
Right.
We would use some dollars within that area, but also if there was a need for any additional classrooms within the district, we'd have the ability to lease levy for those costs. Those lease costs would come out of the operating capital area, and then we would lease levy and have lease levy revenue to offset that.
I realize that this is a discussion of capital, but what type of things are we looking at that will have to be done to renovate a room or prepare new rooms or something?
The only real thing of existing rooms that might need to be done would be adding bathrooms to the rooms themselves, which is somewhere between a $30,000 to $50,000 number per room.
So we are ready to go.
Yes.
Rod, you're starting a process, right, to ascertain what our needs are with respect to complying with the new K-12 law, right?
Correct.
That's the question. So once you complete that process, you'll identify what the needs are and come up with a financing plan for those needs.
Correct.
So when do you expect to complete that process?
Our plan is to have a process or the numbers for that by the end of June.
So that legislation calls for, I'm gonna say voluntary buy into free full-day kindergarten. So is that an assumption that's gonna happen by administrative decision, or does the board have to make a formal decision to go ahead with that?
Do you have a response to that, Rod?
No.
We're gonna have to plan that everybody's gonna opt for this thing, because it's gonna, in the long run, everyone's gonna opt for this full-day K program. So we're gonna have to plan accordingly and determine when we're gonna phase things in. We're gonna have assumptions for that, and what the build-out would be for that, and how we're gonna finance it.
But it's a given, Bloomington will be offering free full-day kindergarten in the fall of 14.
I think it's required that we present that option to the public, yes.
Present that option to
Yes,
the.
because they can choose, they can retain, they can still stay in a half-day program or opt for the full-day program. But we have to plan that we're gonna be all-day K eventually, in the near future. The public's gonna expect it.
So is it something along the lines of, if you're offering kindergarten, you have to offer this as an option then?
That's my,
Yeah, the law reads that if you, the whole site has to be free all-day K for you to be able to receive the funding.
The whole site or the whole district?
The whole site. So each school itself has to be a full-day program to be able to receive the funding. So it could be from site to site type of thing. I mean, we are planning, the assumptions that we're using are, as Superintendent Fujitaki mentioned, is that all kindergartners coming in 14-15 will be in a full-day program.
Unless they opt out.
Yep.
Are we still gonna recommend full-day kindergarten based on kindergarten assessment, even if the family's option might be half-day?
You know, I would have to go back and read the final version of the law, because there was much flip-flopping on that, whether you had to provide the option or not provide the option, and I wish I could tell you the answer, because I heard testimony both ways even in the last week of what a district had to do. I know that if full day is offered, it has to be available to all, but I don't know where they landed in terms of families having a choice of a half day. Because and the issue is planning. If you plan for all of your children to be there all day and 3 of them drop off in the afternoon, you don't get the revenue, but you still have the same expense essentially. So I don't have an answer, but as we do that planning, we'll have to build some assumptions based on how the final law was written.
Okay.
Yep.
The next area is our debt service fund. This is the fund that deals with our principal interest on our current debt. If you look at, we began the current year at $1.5 million. It was pretty much revenue and expenditures washed to end at 1.5. We're showing a slight increase in revenue of about $600,000 between the 2 years. Expenditures are fairly flat. The reason for that increase is that the state requires us to levy 5% above what our principal and interest payments are. And over time, they take those dollars back throughout the levy process. What has happened is that they have now taken them down to a level that we are needing to just do the 5% and we get the credit for the 5%. So that's why you see an increase in the revenue in that year. As the resolution that just passed in the formal meeting, talking about one of the items that would help in our financial plan was the reduction of our debt service, and where you see the line of the 10,000,003, that number would be dropping over time to offset some of those increases in the referendum dollars coming in. Questions on the debt service?
Yes, I do. If that's going to be dropping, can we assume that end fund balance will be maintained somewhere around 1.5 or 2 million, and the money goes where? Or is that fund balance going to be continuously growing?
No, the fund balance won't continuously grow. It will be somewhere between the 1.5 to $2 million range over time. Because once it gets above a certain point, that's when the state and the county starts taking it back on our levy and reducing our levy by an amount to get us to the appropriate fund balance.
So if we're saving money by refunding our bonds, so we have X amount of dollars we've saved. Right, did you just say that it goes back to the state or the county? I mean, or?
No, it reduces the amount of the taxes for that next year. So an
Okay.
example would be is if we had $10 million in debt service, and they needed to do an adjustment of $600,000, they would reduce the levy by $600,000, so the taxpayers would pay less that year. What's always hard to explain that is it gives you those ups and downs in your levy because it's going up and down like that because of those adjustments. And that's where, even though we have a $500,000 or $600,000 increase this year, it's really that we're not getting any more money. It was just that the prior year they were doing reductions down to offset the two.
I thought we, as a board, set the levy level.
You set the levy level, but on the debt service amount, the state requires us to levy 105% of the principal and interest payments that the district owes in each year. Over time, when you levy a 5% over a certain amount, your fund balance grows to a certain level that the state starts pulling those dollars, or the county starts pulling those dollars back. And what they do is they just reduce your levy in the next year to offset those dollars. So they're not, the levy isn't as high for the board to approve.
Further questions? Okay, let's move ahead.
Our self-insurance funds, our dental. We started the year at $939,000. We're looking to break even this year. We budgeted to break even. It looks like we will become pretty close to breaking even. We're ending fund balance of $931,000. Next year, we're budgeting a slight spend down of $58,000, still having a very strong fund balance here of $873,000. Projecting a 3% premium increase with the board approved, and our expenditures are expected to go up 7.4%. Our medical, looking at the current year, we started the year with a fund balance of $464,000. We're showing in our revised budget a $261,000 surplus. Based on our current projections and the rest, that could be more like $500,000 to $600,000. So the numbers are coming in a lot better than what we expected. Our next year, we're looking at, with a 6% increase that the board approved, looking to have a additional add-on to the fund balance of $744,000, again, to build the overall budget, or the overall fund, to sustain the ups and downs of the insurance market over the years. Our other post-employment benefits, internal service funds, our OPEB trust, these are dollars that the board bonded for back in 2009 to pay for our post-employment obligations. As you can see, the fund ended at $13 million, or projected to be at $13 million at the end of this year. Anticipating spending down this next year of $550,000. So just a somewhat less revenue coming in because of interest rates and some of our investments that we were able to make when we first received the money. We're not getting the same return as we were at that point in time. If you look at our debt, this is the principal and interest payments on those bonds of the $13 million. You see that we have a fund balance of $91,000. We look at this next year, we have revenue coming in of $972,000, payments of $909,000. Again, this is the 5% that we need to levy above the principal and interest. So it shows that we're ending the year at $154,000. Our internal service fund, this is handling our vacation and severance. Current year, we are pretty much looking at it being a wash between revenue and expenditures. Going into 13-14, we're using some of the dollars from this fund to help offset some of the additional costs within the general fund of $750,000. So to have an ending fund balance in this account of $6.2 million. Questions on the self-insurance and internal service funds?
Doesn't appear to be any.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll move next to food service. I'll hand it back over to Mr. Swinnell.
Okay, 13-14 food service fund. We'll start with some proposed assumptions. Operations-wise, we see no substantial changes. Same number of school days, same breakfast and lunch program. On the revenue side, it was just recently announced that the state was going to give us a half-cent more on lunches, and we're estimating that the feds will give us a 5-cent increase on our reimbursements. And we're factoring in no meal increases for the coming year for breakfast or lunches.
Is that a typo on 1314.005?
That's a half cent.
So half a penny.
That's all they're giving us, a half cent,
Yeah.
5 cents. the previous year?
It's going, well, the state reimbursement on lunches is 12 cents, and it's been 12 cents from the state for years, and it's going to 12 and a half.
Okay.
So. And just showing a comparison with our neighbors, where we are with our lunch prices right now at our elementary schools. You can see where we still compare somewhat favorably, but we're slightly above the midpoint at this time when we compare with our districts that are contingent districts. Our middle schools show where we stand with our prices right now at $2.70. We see a couple districts above us. Our high schools, we show we're at the high end even with a couple other of our neighbors. And just to review where we've gone with our lunch prices over the last 3 years. Last year, 12-13, we did increase a nickel. This year, we propose to hold them the same. Breakfast prices, this will be the 3rd year in a row we stayed with our breakfast prices at elementary, middle, and high school. And some districts do not have breakfast programs, and some only offer them on a limited basis at the elementary levels. And we do compare favorably with our neighbors on our breakfast prices.
Do we have percentages of how many elementary, middle, and high school students actually use or take breakfast in the morning?
Yes. Numbers I don't have, but I have participations. We have close to 17% of our secondary schools students. Elementaries, it's close to 37%, and overall, we're right about, just above 30%.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So our proposed budget, showing revenues and expenditures basically flat for 12-13 with an anticipated fund balance of close to 1.6 million. We start with that beginning fund balance. We're showing revenues and expenditures fairly flat, expenditures just slightly exceeding revenues, and again ending with a $1.6 million fund balance. And then just showing the difference from year to year. One other slide this year is just to take a look at our neighbors and see where their fund balances are compared to ours. You can just see that there's some that carry low, very low or minimal fund balance. We are towards the higher end on our fund balance, and it's just each district has over the years have probably had a different fund balance philosophy on where they think they need to be for their emergencies and their, unforeseen needs. Questions or comments?
Yes, Dick, go ahead.
John, I guess this would be for you. If I walk into a high school cafeteria in Burnsville or Eden Prairie or Edina, am I apt to get similar meal to what we're serving at Jefferson and Kennedy? I mean, it doesn't have to be the exact same meal, but is it similar offerings? Is it?
Yes, it is. And especially this year with the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, every school district had to comply this year with the new USDA meal standards. It was not an option not to, or you couldn't say, well, we just don't really want to do that. They would sooner or later not fund you or give you any reimbursements, and you wouldn't have a program anymore unless you wanted to pay for it yourself. They set calorie limits for each grade. They set fruit and vegetable quantity requirements for each grade level, 1 through 5, 6, 8, and so forth. And they set limits on meat and bread. much more, before it used to just be a minimum of calories that each district had to serve per grade level to qualify as a reimbursable meal. This year, they set maximums also, so, and it's a very tight window. So I would suspect, other than days of the week and so forth, they've gone as far as to say how many red vegetables, green vegetables, yellow vegetables, and the different legumes you have to serve during a week's period. And the state had to approve every district's menu submission and get approved to move on, so.
So the high school students are, do we have any idea if they're taking advantage of the fruits and veggies more, or are they? I mean, I know I serve at the elementary level, and I've seen a market change from the beginning in September to now. The little ones are actually asking for more fruits and veggies, which is wonderful to see. But I think it's due, at least in part, the fact that we have it there for them to choose from.
I've seen a slight, probably of any grade level, a reduction in participation has been at the high schools, more than the elementaries or middle schools. And I have my own theory that the older you get, the more set in what you like to eat and what you're used to and what you've been brought up with our meals throughout the years. And when you're younger, you're probably more open to the changes that have occurred now. So we have seen an increase in the a la carte purchases too at the high school. So, and I hope to see a change over time as our kids move up in the grade levels.
Yeah, well, maybe the kids that are eating in the elementary level that are eating veggies will bring that idea with them to middle and high school.
That's what I'm thinking.
If a dishwasher or an oven breaks down, say at Jefferson, does that come out of this budget, the food services budget, or does that come out of a different capital budget?
No, this fund is for everything.
Salaries,
food, benefits,
capital.
food, milk, everything comes out of here, our equipment, all the things that we've maintained, all our supplies, everything. It's, it has to be kept separate, and we have to pay for all our own stuff.
That answers my question. I was wondering why we had such a big fund balance, but I can see if a major item breaks down, we have to have money. So thanks.
Yes, you're welcome.
All right, anything further in the way of questions or comments before we move on to transportation?
Okay. Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, members of the board, here to present the Transportation Fund. Our state aid this year for 12-13 was at 1% and 2% for special education. 13-14 proposed is at 1.5 and 3% for special education. Our charters, currently this year we had a 4% increase for external charters, and we did a 2% increase for internal charters. Next year we're looking at the same level of raising those costs. 12-13 revised budget at 2.9. You can see our ending fund balance at 2.972. 13-14 proposed 2.972 with expenditures at 5.9 under revenue, leaving us at an ending fund balance of 2.895. And you can see the differences from 12 to 13. Questions or comments?
Yes, Dick, go ahead.
Tom, just a quick question. For those folks at home that don't know the difference between external and internal charters, how would you define those?
Internal charters are anybody in our school system, in our grade levels or schools utilizing our buses to go on a field trip. External charters are groups that are connected with the school system but are external customers or groups that are connected to the school system, but we still provide a service to church groups or ones working with our students that we can provide services to that we consider as an outside source. So we don't have a large raise going to our internal group, just for external groups out there. And we're still below what market is holding right now, so
Okay, great, thank you.
you bet.
Mark?
Well, just a quick question. How many years does it take us to turn over our fleet?
It's a very good question. We purchased a larger amount of buses several years back. So if you look at this year's pricing on our bus purchase, it was very low, and we're starting to step that back up. Our proposed plan is a 10-year turnover, leaving it at approximately with 110 buses, at about 10 buses per year that we'd like to get back up to in turnover. But because of that large purchase several years ago, we dropped that back and had some time to slowly purchase buses again.
I know that you've been looking at sort of alternative fueled buses. Are there any promising technologies from your viewpoint?
Good question. I'm hopefully optimistic. Right at the moment, I don't have a definitive answer to you. I do think there's more to come yet in what our alternative fuels might be. Specifically, I speak to two partnerings right now. Propane is yet to be determined. However, we still have some upcoming players, as in compressed natural gases, that are a new upcoming player in the market, and that we're hoping to possibly have an opportunity to explore in the upcoming, the future bus purchases.
We have purchased this current year, 2 propane buses. We're still testing them, we're verifying them. We're noticing that we weren't getting as good of gas mileage or fuel mileage as some of the other districts that have done it. We've brought in the contractor to take a look at our buses and give us some feedback on it. We're not planning on expanding our fleet in the way of propane until we get a better answer of what their actual will be for a payback on those.
Thank you.
How long have we had our own fleet? How many years?
14 years now. Just a year ago, we saw the first students that started kindergarten go all the way through with their own school buses, which was kind of exciting, but we're on our 14th year now of having our own school buses back in Bloomington.
You mentioned we have about 110 buses in our fleet.
We have 110 vehicles.
How many are on the road at a typical morning of a school day?
Tomorrow, I can tell you just about every bus is going to be hitting the pavement.
110.
110.
What happens if you have a breakdown?
Well, we do have some spares, and obviously, I'm saying just about every one of them are going to hit the pavement. We have a lot of trips going out tomorrow, but we always have a contingency for backups.
Yes, go ahead, Nellie.
For, does this fund cover any type of training for special ed drivers or drivers of buses carrying special ed kids?
Yes, we provide extensive training for our special ed drivers and bus assistants that we have riding our vehicles out there. And it's covered underneath this fund, I think was your question.
This fund is a way to be able to separate the cost from the general fund itself, and just like how food service pays for its own equipment and deals with its own thing, transportation is set up the same way. They pay for their own buses, they pay for all the training, all of the salaries and everything else within that area. So what it enables them to do is to manage their funds without having to impact the general fund with any ups and downs with things. They can manage it themselves.
What do we get paid per student per day or per year from the state?
The actual revenue number per student, I don't have that number in front of me right now.
Just a guess, what do you think?
I think we're at about $400 or $500 per student on revenue per year for transportation.
The calculation for for transportation was, like, trying to think when it was rolled into the overall basic formula. But it's average, whatever the basic formula is, it's 4.85% of the formula revenue is what the old calculation was. So if we're looking at a little over $5,000, we're looking at $250 to $300 plus special ed additional costs where we have it there too. So
So if the state is gonna give us 1% additional state aid, and that's $2.50?
well, if it's the $78 that they're giving us on the formula,
Oh,
so we
I
get,
thought you said $250.
but they give us, the new money they gave us right now is $78. So the 1% increase, or the 4% on that amount is, a couple dollars.
Okay. And we get that money, like, for example, at the high school, I would imagine most of our buses are at best half full. But we get that money, whatever that specific money is, for every child that goes to Kennedy or Jefferson, whether they use the bus or not.
Right, it's rolled into the formula revenue, so it's all based on the formula.
Eligibility.
Mark?
I'll preface this question by saying, Ace, that I think this is one of our great success stories, just the way you run the transportation department. But do we periodically look at what it would cost us if we outsourced transportation?
I have not recently gone back. However, we have a contract with Outside Buses right now to provide additional services with our school system. So we do have the numbers, and I could get that to you.
Chair, I have a response to that. The state produces average cost per student for transportation by district. And you can compare contracted districts to operating fleets. And we own our own, and ours, contracted services are always more expensive per student than the district owns its own fleet. And we have one of the lowest operating costs per student in the metro area.
So that suggests to you that if you did a rigorous analysis, we'd never,
Right,
we're always better off having our own.
yes.
How many private or parochial schools do we provide transportation for? In Bloomington, I mean.
I could get that exact number to you, but currently, right now, it is mostly Nativity that we're providing within the boundary of Bloomington Public Schools. Unfortunately, some of those programs have dropped off over years on some of the non-publics.
Okay.
Not being successful, or we're absorbing those students.
Thank you.
All right, we can go on.
Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitaki, members of the board, and those in the listening audience that are still with us, we are getting towards the end here. I am here to do the community services budget for 13 and 14. We'll take a quick look at programs and services, our financial condition, assumptions, goals, and concerns and variables. To break the community services program down, you see there are a number of programs. So we group them into program areas, those 4 areas. 3 adult learning, youth and family, and community programs are primary community ed programs, and the other programs are programs that the funds are run through the community service funds, but essentially flow through operations and programs that we don't manage. Taking a look at 11, 12, the fund balances for each of those 4 areas, you can see that individually we have decent fund balances, and overall we're meeting our fund balance objectives there. Going on to our first area of adult learning, and again, if you don't remember all that was included in there, that's our adult basic ed and adults with disabilities program. Our revised budget, we're anticipating an ending fund balance of $424,000. and proposing to, in what we call invest a little bit of our fund balance into our future next year, with revenues being just about the same and expenses going up slightly. So having about a $350,000 fund balance at the end of 13 and 14. And youth and family learning, our largest groupings of programs, with a ending proposed fund balance in the revised budget of $1.6 million. And again, with revenue proposed to drop slightly next year, expenditures being relatively flat, spending a reasonable $112,000 out of that $1.6 million, with a proposed ending fund balance of $1.5 million at the end of 13 and 14. In the community programs area, our smallest fund balance of all our collection of programs, proposing in our revised budget $170,000. Again, revenue down slightly, expenses down slightly, spending down about $74,000, leaving us with a fund balance of just under $100,000. In the other programs, and again, those are the areas that are typically in and out budgets, both revenues and expenditures flat, leaving us at the end of this year and next year with about $250,000 fund balance. In terms of assumptions, fundings per current law, and of course now we're just delving into the basic changes, and we know that when we come back with our budget adjustments mid-year, that we did get some additional funding in ABE. They restored a 1% that they'd taken away in the automatic increase a couple of years ago. So that will help us. It's not calculated in the budget right now. We brought to you earlier some fee increases that you approved, which is typically the case because most community service funds don't see an increase, and the only way we get additional revenue is through additional user fees. And we, to manage that, continue to try to have cost containment in all of our programs. So in summary, we're proposing to end this year in the revised budget with about $2.5 million fund balance. Again, we're going to be investing some of our fund balance next year and continuing to be a leader in early childhood, implementing our early childhood plan, investing some additional dollars in adult basic ed, and still having a proposed fund balance of $2.2 million at the end of 13 and 14. And with that, I'll take questions or comments.
Are there questions and comments? Mark?
Just going back to your slide that shows the programs, is Musical Avenues under the youth enrichment bullet? And what's the status of that program? Has it been growing over the last few years, or?
It has. We, you may recall.
Musical Avenues.
You may recall that we combined the efforts of youth enrichment and Musical Avenues into a position, and we've seen growth in both of those programs over the last 2 years.
You know, kind of ballpark the number of kids taking lessons in Musical Avenue?
I don't have that number.
Could you send that to us?
Sure.
Thanks.
What's with the youth and family learning, what's happening there that we have about $1 million revenue increase and $1 million expenditure increase? Just more participants?
Some of that is, we had a
52, if you want to look at it.
We had a downturn with the economy in Kids Safari. A big portion of that total program budget, about $3 million of that total budget, is in our school-age care program. And there's a direct relationship between the economy and number of people working and the people that choose that service. And the parents pay the entire fee, so it's the fees support the total cost of the program. So as the economy has returned, we've seen that go up. We also include our Early Learners Academy, which is our care and preschool program combined in there. And again, as the economy went down, we had some drop off in that. And I believe I heard last week that all of our 3 sites, we have 2 partial day openings for our next fall enrollments in that. So that makes up quite a bit of the increase.
Do you foresee the free full-day kindergarten having any impact on your Kid Safari program? I'm thinking it would boost it myself.
I wouldn't see the impact, anticipate an impact on Kid Safari. We currently have the program called Kinder Plus, which is a fee-based program for full-day K that's run out of, in that category of other programs. And so I would anticipate that if and when we have all-day K for all, that program essentially will go away. And again, that's a break-even program, so you'll see an equivalent of revenue and expense go down for that program. The other thing I would mention in the youth and family area, between Fund 1 and early childhood investments, based on the early childhood plan, we are increasing our slots in Kinder Prep, our at-risk 4-year-old program, from 190 to 240 students. So that's an investment of about a $500,000 of new investment in that program that I reported on earlier.
Well, I can see, for example, someone that would have been half-day kindergarten now going full-day. And under the old half-day, they would have come home 11:30-ish and went to a daycare of some sort. Now they'll go full-day and come home about 3-ish, and I would imagine that they will, don't you think they'll go to Kid Safari for the hour and a half till mom and dad come home from work?
I imagine some of them will.
The bulk of them, I bet.
We could only hope.
Well,
It would be a good choice for them.
I think you should plan that way, because I think that's.
So that's looking out another year. This isn't in next year's budget.
Right.
Right. That would be interesting.
I have a question.
Sure. Nellie?
Youth and family learning, Washburn Family Academy home visits, do we now have a budget? Is there a detailed budget of how much was spent in the past year or during this past year?
That, the family engagement budget will be part of the Fund 1 budget that will be presented
17.
on the 17th. So the only part of the community service budget is a continuation of the investment that community services has in there right now. So we're maintaining our investment, but it's really gonna be spent on the expansions and come on the Fund 1 side.
Do you know at this point or have an idea of how much we're talking about when we talk about Family Academy as it was this year?
For 13-14, the total investment in
12-13.
and again, the 12-13 budget is embedded in both the Fund 4 and Fund 1. Community service budget pays for Suzanne Puhulu, who coordinates the program but also coordinates other things, so a portion of her salary. We fund the family engagement coordinator at Washburn, and Valley View funds its own position. So probably about the equivalent of about 3 FTEs, and then the sites pick up some supply costs.
All right, any other questions?
So the timeline, as I mentioned before, is we brought to you tonight the non-general fund budgets. On the 17th, we'll bring you the general fund budget. And then on the 24th, we'll bring to the group a resolution to adopt all the budgets. Any other questions on these funds?
Yes, Mark?
I have one question back on the internal service fund. What factors do you consider when you're kind of deciding where you want the balance on that fund, where you want it to be?
Can you tell us which slide?
What?
Which slide are you looking
It's 31.
at? Okay.
What I guess I'm trying to understand is we're moving $750,000 out of the internal service fund, I think you said, to the general fund.
One more.
What this is dollars that we have set aside for both severance and vacation accrual overtime. And this was money that was also set aside before before we sold our OPEB bonds. So this is kind of almost like some of the committed funds that we've had over time. And so what we're looking as, because of some of the additional increases in expenditures on the general fund side, shortfall, I mean, just kind of as a high level, we're looking at the budget that we're gonna be coming into the board on the 17th of a deficit spending of about $4.1 million. It would be about $4.8 million if we weren't switching or transferring over this money. So it's kind of trying to soften the blow, kind of like how we talked about bridging different things over time. That's the purpose of this fund. So this fund is not really tied to anything. It's been more of just keeping track of our vacation and severance over time.
Well, that's my question really is, so what are the maximum liability against that fund? Right, in other words, there's some maximum amount of severance and vacation that theoretically you'd have to pay out. And I'm just wondering where the balance stands with respect to that number.
We're in a process of, for this year's year-end audit, we'll have a new actuarial report of what our maximum liability is. I would say that we're probably, when you look at the OPEB trust account, we're probably $1 million or $2 million off that number of being fully funded. So probably looking at that's $2 to $3 million out of this number is helping to support the trust. And we'll know more, like I mentioned, we'll know more at the audit time of exactly what those numbers are. But I'm very comfortable that the 750, it's kind of, as we talked about it, kind of a bridge process.
Okay, thanks.
All right, good. Other questions? All right then. Well, allow me to say thank you very much for bringing this information to us tonight. And it seems to be some real positive information that we're having in terms of being able to maintain effort, and we're not looking to have any outlandish increases in different areas, and we have fund balances that cover what may be some deficits in the budget for next year, but we're well within range of what we would like to see with balances going forward. Anything else we should be aware of before the next time we meet?
Nope, like I mentioned, on the 17th, we'll bring you the general fund, and then on the 24th, we'll bring you the resolution fund.
Excuse me. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're at the end of our agenda for our study session, unless a board member has other business this time. Meeting is adjourned.